You are listening to the Mary Jane Society podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, scientists, doctors, and inventors in the cannabis industry.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel, marketer and publicist in the cannabis industry. Today we meet Alex Rogers. He's been a cannabis activist on the West Coast since the 90s and has worked under people like Jack Herrera, to name a few. He moved to Europe and continued his quest to legitimize cannabis. And in 2019, he took the chance and started what has become one of the best-known cannabis B2B trade shows in Europe, called the International Cannabis Business Conference, held in multiple countries each year. His next show is in Barcelona on March 14th in partnership with Spannabis. Alex gives us insights and opportunities into the market, especially since Germany's big step towards legalization last week. Let's welcome Alex to the show. Yeah, and how about you?
I'm in Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Oh, wow. Okay, I knew you were in that you're living there. You grew up on the West Coast, right? And
I grew up in Minneapolis, but I spent like 25 years on the West Coast.
Right, and I know you got married and then you moved to Europe, and that I have followed you a little bit here.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we live in Slovenia now for the last couple of years, and my wife's from here, and it's delightful. We're having just a great time here. I actually presented in front of the National Council a couple of weeks ago, and it was a pretty big deal.
Oh, amazing. I mean, it's just not a country you hear about a lot, and it's interesting how these little countries, well, Czechoslovakia, I think is one that's kind of coming up and things like that. But
So Slovenia is similar in that it's a progressive Eastern European country in general.
Right. Yeah.
Even though some Slovenians would say it still has its vestiges of conservatism, which really just means traditionalism here. I kind of would translate that into, but yeah, it's great, and we're doing a lot of work here. We've partnered with all these research and R&D public research institutions, and we're taking it to the next level here, Pam, in little old Slovenia.
Excellent. Okay, I want to hear about that. Okay, we got to talk about that.
It's
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, I know. I really I'm really excited about this conversation. I just given everything that's happening over there, but I think we're getting.
God, tons of shit with Germany too.
I know. I know we're all getting excited over here, but and we have to calm down, but it is exciting, the future. And you've been, mucking around in it over there for a while, so it must be really exciting for you to see some movement. Yeah, so I thought let's first let everybody know, what the International Cannabis Business Conference is, and just start with that as to hit it off. And we can...
Sure. I came up with that concept, Pam, about 11, 12 years ago. And the idea was, as cannabis was becoming legal in all these different respective jurisdictions, I figured, well, one day it's going to be legal over in Europe too. Now, I'd lived in Amsterdam, I'd lived in Germany before, and I knew what kind of harm prevention models Europe had. I knew they didn't have at all really a cannabis industry like we had cultivated over the years in America. But I just figured 2 and 2 equals 4, and that it would be eventual. And so I had the foresight and the, I don't know, when I look back and I kind of get PTSD when I think of how much work I did to get to this point. But I came in early when we brought the ICBC to, first we were in Vancouver, but I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so that didn't feel totally international to me. And then we finally got to Europe. I went to Germany, and our first event was 2017. And we had been doing events in San Francisco and Vancouver and Hawaii and all over the place. And I basically then put my flag, just took this chance on Berlin, and it hit because the medical came basically literally 3 days before the conference, and everyone knew it was coming. medical marijuana came in Germany, which is now medical marijuana in Germany is now the basically the main market driver in all of Europe and in a lot of places internationally too, because it's a federal jurisdiction that people know they can import their cannabis into. So anyway, I just saw a niche and I saw that it hadn't been covered and I wanted to be disruptive and I wanted to think of something new and creative. And of course, I'd lived in 5 or 6 different countries and I, spoke all those respective languages a little bit. And I kind of considered myself a global universal citizen. And I was like, well, let's go. Let's make it international. And that was the impetus behind it all.
Europe wasn't close to where it is today. And I guess I'm just wondering, what was your focus, so early out? What was happening and how has it transitioned to where we are now?
I
What
just connected with the hippies like I always did when I came into a new area. And when I say that, I mean the activist. Okay, so I don't want to be dismissive or make a misnomer or anything. But basically, I when I would go into a new area 10 years ago, 8 years ago, or whatever city or country it was, I would first link with the activists because they were the people. They're the folks that the first conferences, big cannabis conferences before, let's say MJ Biz, was the Normal conference. I don't know if people remember that one, but that was kind of the big conference in the cannabis space, and there was an industry that was kind of forming around it through medical cannabis, obviously, right? Especially in California, when it kind of how it all started. Yeah, so what I had to do is I had to showcase what was happening in Canada and America, basically, right? And then we had the medical aspect going on, right? That would just started, so that was a strong topic of conversation. But I really brought a lot of folks from America and Canada over, and we were like learning what is the industry. Do you want to get a peek into what's going to happen? Do you want to make partners who are already doing this, and so on and so on. So that was kind of what I was doing early on, and then a few things happened. Medical really took off. The CBD boom happened, and that gave us a boost, even though the medical marijuana German market was the main driver. So we focused mostly on that, but ended up focusing a little bit on CBD. Now it's not so much on CBD, it's basically medical and recreational. Or when I say recreational, I mean what Germany has just done right now. I don't know what you want to call it because whatever it is, it's not licensed regulation from soup to nuts. It's something else because they couldn't do it because of EU dictates. And so they just did as much as they could. So now we're talking about there's multiple prongs now. So within this, what people don't realize is within this new CAN-G bill, which is Germany's legalization bill, which just passed the German Senate less than a week ago. It takes cannabis off the narcotics. So everybody knows about social clubs, or a lot of people know about there's going to be social clubs, and there's now 25 grams is legal on the street, 50 in person, 3 plants a person can grow at their house. Seeds and clones will now be available. Those are all huge things. One of the biggest things is cannabis is coming off the narcotics list, though, and this is giving a huge boost to medical cannabis in that it's just a normal RX product now. So doctors will be able to prescribe it with less scrutiny, if you will. And this can't be understated how important this is for medical cannabis in Germany, because now they're looking at a system that could go 4x in just 2 years. So let's say they have a maximum 250,000 patients right now in Germany. We're looking at 1 million patients in Germany in about 2 years, a lot of people predict. So that's a huge, huge jump. But I think the momentum's there, and I think it's going to be close to those numbers.
So if the medical market's been open in Germany, why will there be a spike in people joining the medical market or signing up? Like here, you had to get the medical card, and that was the way for people to legally get it, right? Right. So is that kind of what's opening up?
Yeah. Great question. It's a prescription from a doctor, right? So when a doctor prescribes a narcotic in Germany and usually most other places, they have to adhere to more stringent rules and regulations, right? One might be you have to re-up the prescription every month if it's a narcotic. You have to have a lot of diligence and care with the person. Now that it's off the narcotics, I don't know. I don't know how long, but maybe it's 6 months or a year now. I don't know those exact numbers, but
Mm.
that's one big factor. Another big factor is a psychological factor with doctors in general. So now more family practitioners are going to be more comfortable prescribing this, knowing that it's a narcotic, knowing that they might not come up against the medical board, even though there's not a real precedent for that if it's only a few patients. But this is in doctors' minds. And we always know that a big, huge market driver to medical marijuana programs is doctor education. And we know
Oh,
that a lot of jurisdictions have medical marijuana programs, even sometimes fairly robust, but they don't catch on. Even Oregon, where I lived for so long and worked, that it just rested at this many patients, and then one day it was like, oh, it's a thing, and now you might have found, it just figures itself out. But in some, but doctor education is even more important in Germany because it is prescribed, right? Because in America you'll have 5 doctors who will then card 60% of the state or whatever, right?
right.
We've seen that, and that's fine and dandy. But in Germany, because it's a prescription, then and it's sold through the pharmacies. That needs to be clear too. There's no just cannabis store to sell. There will be now in Germany, but under medical auspices, it's through the pharmacies. So with this with it coming off the narcotics list, just the average doctor is going to be more apt to prescribe it, and then it goes through this pharmacies. And this is very interesting because it sounds very clinical, but in fact many pharmacies in Germany are specializing in cannabis. So when you walk in, it feels like a high-end dispensary.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I mean, that is one of the problems that the whole world faces is trying to get doctors, get their attention to have them focus on, the science behind it, and that's a big challenge here. So does your show also, I mean, in the advocacy part, I know you really started that way. Are you working or in that direction also, with
Yeah.
research?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm an advocate, right? I'm probably an advocate before I'm a businessman. I'm just a musician and an avid weed lover and advocate. I have been for 30 years. Jack Hare was my mentor. I met him in '93, and he hired me to be his Northern California signature main organizer for his California Hemp Initiative 30 years ago, over 30 years ago.
Jeez,
And
wow.
yeah, I was up on Haight-Ashbury and I'm up on Telegraph in Berkeley and all.
Oh
As
my
Jack
God.
Hare. Jack Hare bought my first ticket to the Grateful Dead, actually.
Oh my God. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast, in New York, upstate New York, and
Yeah.
it's worlds away from California what you guys were doing. I
Well,
mean,
yeah. I mean, and I grew up in Minneapolis, right? And so I was just off the boat from Minneapolis into California, so to speak. And I was blown away. Like all the hippies were like, I like the hippies. They had the good weed. They had some cool psychedelics and shit that I never tried. I loved it, but what they weren't is they were like kind of trustafarians that didn't understand how to work. And I'm from the Midwest, and so our Lutheran gods will smote us on the spot if we don't work at least 60 hours a week, and we're not 5 minutes early to our meetings. So, and I was the black sheep of the Midwest in a little way. And then I come out to California. I'm like, oh shoot, the curve's been changed.
oh
No
my,
offense to California, but everybody knows the Midwest work ethic and the East Coast work ethic is next level. And of course, I liked the mid California because it was super chill and everything. But that's how I got in and did all this work. I worked with Debbie Goldsberry. I worked with Dennis Perrone. Uh, I worked with Ed Rosenthal. I worked with Dale Geringer. I worked with Chris Conrad, Mickey Norris, all the main players
oh,
out there. I worked with. We did the Hemp Expo in '94. Now you're getting me going. You're getting me regaling tales of yesteryear. But the point is I was always into cannabis because I thought it was a human right. I thought it's a civil liberty. Jack always said it should be treated like tomatoes. I agree. Politically, that's not where we're at. We know we have a lot of work to do. Um, but if I look at cannabis in a very benign sense, right, personally, and I think it is a great tool. Can it be abused? Of course. Is it a great tool for society in a lot of ways? Yes, for sure. Jack used to say hemp can save the world, and I wasn't sure. I like smoking and I love cannabis, but he literally said it would save the world, and I thought he was full of shit for a little bit. But fact is he wasn't. Especially
Yeah.
with all economics. So what I wanted to get to was the biggest thing happening with the KNG bill in Germany from an activist perspective is that cannabis penalties are being reduced by about 50% for just regular for manufacturing and distribution, right? So if you're outside whatever system they've set up, the penalty and you commit a crime as it's looked upon in German law, basically instead of 5 years maximum penalties, now it's gone 2.5, which still sucks, but that's a huge, huge, huge step. Also, they're going to have to do amnesty for people who fall under these new possession laws, and they are going to retroactively expunge uh,
Okay.
records for folks who have been charged, arrested, incarcerated, or whatever for certain cannabis, what used to be certain cannabis crimes deemed as. So this is a huge thing, and this is what Pam. It's interesting because the first thing I said on the very first ICBC 217 was I said, guess what? We will become legal in Germany in some way somehow. But the administrators and the lawmakers, they're gonna mess it up. They're not gonna do a job. A great job. Well, all we can hope for, the most important thing is that everybody can grow weed at your own house, and that criminal penalties are ended. I said, right? So what's happened now in Germany is that everybody can grow weed at their house, and criminal penalties have been heavily reduced. So this bill, it can't be understated of how multifaceted it is. I guess from medical, for industry, for what is de facto recreational of sorts, and then the human rights advocacy aspect of it.
So are people who are speaking at your conference, I've noticed there's policymakers there. Do you attract a big government people to listen in? Because they're always looking to listen to the experts and you know hear from them. So I'm just curious what happens on
Yeah.
that level at your
Yeah,
show.
so the government folks are not always the experts. It's nice to get some regulators there, so you can ask questions that hopefully they can answer clearly. That being said, we do have we're one of our panels every year is with the coalition, the Senate members, Parliament members from Germany, and we have a roundtable with the German Cannabis Business Association. We've had the drug czar of Germany keynote. We have a big announcement to make for who's going to keynote. I can't announce it now. It's not 100%, but I think I'll be able to announce it soon. Who's going to keynote, and that would be somebody from the government. And what's really cool is one of my favorite things about the ICBC is it's 80 people from over 80 countries are represented there.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, and we have governments of Colombia, Uruguay. We have the government of Australia there. We have the government of New Zealand traditionally there. Um, uh, uh, the Isle of Man. I mean, there's just all these jurisdictions that actually bring their governments or their a
Represented.
certain section of their economic development agency or of sorts there. And these countries are there at the ICBC doing international cannabis business. It's absolutely fascinating. So we have a lot of the German politicians and administrators there, and then we also get all these other countries represented there at the ICBC. It's really cool.
Is the ICBC mostly focused on educational and panel discussions, or is a big part of it an exhibit? What is the main uh
So, you know, what a great example for your audience might be is we're a mini MJ Biz, or we're how Lyft used to be in Toronto. That's really that's probably our best, the
yeah,
most clear comparison I could make to what we are, which is, yeah, we have a theater of 1,000 people, and we're one track. We're not multiple tracks, so it's all on main stage,
okay.
which I'm a pretty staunch advocate for doing it that way.
Hmm.
And then we are the biggest B2B trade show for cannabis in the Eastern Hemisphere. So we've got about 150,000 square feet, which is small compared to MJ Biz, which I think is over 1 million, but huge
Yeah,
for Europe and the market right now. Uh, so we're both. We're kind of MJ Biz format, soup to nuts conference with 2 days, do one track. So it's kind of the scourge of my existence to figure out what we're gonna. There's so much to talk about, and then to chisel it down into 2 days is
yeah,
not an
yeah,
easy task.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, and then we have this beautiful trade show, and from people all over the world exhibiting. It's like a mini MJ Biz, but it's more international per capita in that most people you meet at MJ Biz are Americans, and then there's some Canadians, and you meet some Israelis, and this guy's from South. You do have, but
yeah.
per capita, every single person you meet at the ICBC is from a different country.
That's so amazing. And so, I mean, also going back again, being early in the game, who's, who's exhibiting at these shows? Because, how much can you do when things aren't legal? Like how much,
We
pre.
we've expanded every year. Our first show was about 1,000 people in 2017. And it was a small expo. It was what we would call a boutique expo, but we had 50 exhibitors even back in 2017, 2018. And, it was all about, and we were a B2B show. There was already big consumer shows in Europe with the seeds and the paraphernalia and the lights and the soil. Those are typical things that you'd see at a consumer show. But now it's a B2B show. And I just basically, through my network I had built through America and Canada, I use that network to say, hey guys, let's come to Europe because you want to get in early, it's going to happen. And
Yeah,
literally, because the medical thing happened right on our first show, when I booked that venue in 2016, nothing was going on. I was like, my German friends were like, Alex, $500 a ticket. I do not, how do you say German? We are a very frugal people. We are very worried for you, Alex. And I'm like, thank you for your brutal German honesty. I really appreciate that because I'm pretty much petrified too.
I'm sure I would be thinking the same thing. I mean, honestly,
I
oh,
mean,
that's
Pam, even a
nerve-wracking.
blind hog finds an ear of corn every once in a while, and that old medical program hit, and I was just praying to Jaja and sending out the manifestation and the light and the attraction, and not saying I don't know what I had to do with what I had to do with, but I definitely helped, bring along and help mature the German cannabis industry. 100%. So the first booths we had, it was just like you would see at MJ. We had the extractor machines, and like
Yeah.
we had the lawyers there. We had all the tech, all the techie stuff. Some, lightings for growing too. We had some of that, just a little dash of everything. And now you go to our website and look. I think we have about 120 exhibitors now, but now they're big booths, right? So now we have these huge booths, and then in a month we'll have about 150. We have a huge surge right now. So since just last Friday, there's been a massive surge for us. So
Oh,
it's been really
great.
great. Yeah, and yeah, so we're expecting about 5,000 people at this event, and it's a super exciting time to be in Germany and Europe right now.
Yeah. And so this year you're partnering with Spannabis, and I wanted to know, like, how do the shows different? I've never been obviously to either one. And how did that how does that synergy work? And what's I mean, now we
Yeah.
know what your show is about. How do you complement each other?
Yeah, good question. So the ICBC Berlin is April 16th and 17th. It's the big uh, trade show. It's our flagship event. About 5 or 6 years ago, I forget who contacted who actually. It was just a wonderful marriage that we made with Spannabis 5 6 years ago, and I had built this wonderful brand in America. They knew I was coming, bringing B2B into Europe, and they wanted to partner with me, and they saw me as a element that they're completely two separate events, right? They just saw that it would be smart to team up, and then I pushed them, they pushed me, and we just immediately had a wonderful simpatico, and I started doing the B2B element of Spannabis with a one-day ICBC show the day before Spannabis. So we have a beautiful partnership with Spannabis, which are a consumer show, and a lot of consumer shows will will try to have a B2B element, and they just kind of cannibalize themselves and won't, or it's hard. People think this B2B thing is easy, and charging $500 a ticket is that everyone, and
Yeah, it's
it's not,
tough.
it's tough. It's a lot of work. So Spanish is just like, you do your thing, we'll do our thing, and we'll just benefit from that. And, I remember that first show I did, there was so much pressure on me to do good because I wanted to show the Carloses, the owners, but my guy Carlos and my guy Jose, they were just so open and wonderful that then it was on me to now make this shit happen. And I was like, okay. And then that popped off the first event too, amazingly successful, and it's just stays the same every year. It's a boutique event with only about 20 exhibitors tables, but there's close to 1,000 people there, and it is a one-day networking fest.
Mm. Wow. Okay, that's going to be so interesting. Yeah. I'm excited to go. So
You're gonna
what
love
is
it.
oh cool. That's so
And our
cool.
after party with DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill
Okay.
later.
I'm
Come on,
not sure.
girl, come on, girl. Come after a couple glasses of wine, and we'll see, Pam. We'll
Oh
see
my
how much you like
gosh.
hip hop.
Yeah, not really. Okay. But yeah, I'm mostly really honestly there on holiday with my husband, and just kind of thought, let's go there and check it out. So it's really kind of like yeah, it's going to be great. But so what domino effect do you see with other countries now, with Germany's legalization?
Yeah.
How do you see this all rolling out now?
Yeah, great question. Huge, because Germany's Europe's big brother. You can always defer to Germany and say, well, they did it. Why can't we do it? Right. But if Germany hasn't done it, then they have a saying in Holland, just being Dutch, or just, excuse me, just being normal. Well, that's crazy enough. And that's kind of how Europe rolls in a lot of ways. And now Germany's made the big move. And so there will be a ripple effect. There's nations like Czech Republic that will definitely be affected by it, immediately. Um, Everywhere. I mean, where I am in Slovenia, I've been doing a lot of work in Slovenia to modernize cannabis policy, and I know that it's a big deal in Slovenia. We've made it very clear in Slovenia that this is happening in Germany. We predicted it would happen. Now it happened, and now we're like, okay, let's go. So I actually just presented to the Slovenians National Council about a week and a half ago regarding cannabis policy, and we're moving. Everybody seems to be into it. There's some, you know, deep vestiges of old school administration power that is still kind of set in their ways in an administrative and bureaucratic sense. And I think that's very common. And so we're just figuring out the landscape and doing what we think is the right holistic disruptive strategy to break down those last bits of, or crash up those last bits of glass ceiling. And so here we go, and we can also see. So we're going to see individual countries start to get more progressive with cannabis. 100%. What we're also going to see is these countries, and this is something that I'll be taking an active role in, is we'll be talking with the European Commission. So we're basically going to be getting countries together and try to speak as one voice. And this is already happening a little bit, but we have a very special event coming up in Brussels in October. And I'm working with some top cats in Slovenia here who work in Brussels also with the government to do this. And we think it's really important that the European Commission understands bridging the gap between private and public partnerships when it comes to, health, agriculture, green economy, all these things, right? That cannabis and hemp is such a major part of it. And, it's all about the professionalization of it and making people feel comfortable and stepping into this realm. Because everyone's kind of for it or kind of giggle, but now most people you talk to, we live in a liberal society in general, not an illiberal society, right? So in a liberal society, just people can at least talk about things, right? And so now it's all about bringing that conversation. And this is in Germany. So, and then we'll bring folks from Germany too, and maybe some government officials from Germany into EU, and then coordinate it with the folks from Czech and Slovenia, and maybe Luxembourg or Denmark or Switzerland, even though they're not part of the EU, but places like that that are already happening, and then we can start to talk to the EU with one voice, similar to an American federal lobby, unfortunately, right? But that's the way the cookie crumbles, and that's how it's set up. So that's what we got to do.
You got to go in full force with that they see that everybody's in agreement to this. As a matter of fact, I just interviewed a lawyer from Germany, Denton's law firm. I don't know if you've heard of that, but yes, that's right.
Peter Holmberg's
yes.
He said what?
Yeah, he was saying the exact same thing as you, that there is this partnership forming of all the different countries that will approach exactly what you were just saying. He was talking about the exact same thing.
Yeah, so Peter's a great friend of mine and a mentor of mine.
Ah, okay. Yeah, it was great conversation. Yeah.
He's the man. I actually just did a podcast with him a couple weeks ago when he was in Slovenia, and he also presented at the National Council for the meeting we were at. So we brought him, my new company, the Tallman Group. We brought him down and had him talk also in front of the National.
What's the Tallman Group?
The Tallman Group is my little secret squirrel vision that I had years ago when I knew I was going to move to Slovenia, my land of milk and honey that I love so much. And I wanted to think, how am I going to help Slovenia? I'd helped California, I'd helped Oregon, I'd helped Germany. And now I was going to be in this little country of 2 million people. And I was like, well, how am I going to help Slovenia? Where Slovenia is so special, Pam, I can't even tell you. These people are so smart and dynamic and sophisticated in this tiny little kind of outback country. But there's only 3 countries with the Alps and the sea: Italy, France, and Slovenia, or as we like to say, Slovenija, because it has love and ja in the name. And the capital, Ljubljana, rhymes with marijuana. So already I love the place, Pam.
Oh God, I'm gonna put that on my bucket list. I love.
Oh no, anybody that needs to, if in Europe, it's Slovenia and Croatia. I can't say enough about the Croatian coast.
Yeah.
So the 2 countries together make one big super Balkan Germanic wonder country, in my opinion. And it's paradise here. But it's small and it doesn't have a whole lot of arable land. What it does have is a lot of smart people and a lot of very important and esteemed public research institutions. So what I decided I wanted to do was create a company that made a partnership with all of Slovenia's major public research institutions. And that's what we've done. Well, we don't have them all yet, and it will never be all, I guess. But we've 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 got maybe half of the major agreements already in line. We're talking with them all, right? And so we're creating this dialogue where we're creating a place in Slovenia, we're creating an environment for Slovenia where cannabis research and development can get done, right? So there's a big gap in the cannabis industry with how much is put into R&D, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So we're trying to create an environment that makes it not such a cumbersome process, and we're able to use these public research institutions while bringing in private money, while getting grants from the EU and such, and creating my goal is to have Slovenia be the world's #1 hub in cannabis research and development. And we've been building all that infrastructure out now to make that so.
So important. I mean, that's what's going to drive it forward, because every country, every country wants to have that medical scientific verification behind them before they start moving forward. We can't expect governments to willy-nilly, just make this legal when we really can't back this up with scientific proof. And
Yeah, that's true. So on the biomedical side, it's extremely important. On the clinical trial side, it's extremely important. And then of course also on the hemp eco save the world. While everyone's talking all this green bullshit, it's all bullshit because it still perpetuates the industrial complexes, right? So you get to buy trees in India, supposedly, so you can still pollute as much as you want. You pay to pollute. I'm not into this, okay? I don't believe it. I actually love planet Earth. I and I Rasta. And so we want clean water, clean seas, clean food. It's not, globalism doesn't work. Communityism works, because otherwise we are totally, totally screwed. So when this conversation happens about health or environment, where are these same people talking hemp or cannabis? They're not. There's a problem. So they're scared of hemp and cannabis because it's so sustainable. It's something that's just meant. Hemp is the opposite of globalism. It's communityism. We're going to get so much from one plant. Not everything. We still need to commoditize. I'm not a purist or an ideologue in any way, but the system now is not, the world is dying, and it's not because of what people think it is. It's because these systems are in place, and while they got us smoke screened, they're sitting here ruining the earth, with polluting the earth, not caring at all. Just plastics, how much plastic, the fucking bottles at the stores, it's insane. So they got us thinking about straws, which are a big deal, but everyone then goes buys their Evian in plastic.
Right.
So I'm an entrepreneur. You have to find the solution. I'm like a nerd. I'm a Virgo. I have to figure out what I'm objective and what this doesn't feel right. So what more better thing can we do for the earth than create a hemp plastic and replace all, because you're not going to replace you're not going to have people not have their conveniences. What you can do is you can create something that if you throw it in a landfill, well, at least in 10 years it'll be gone instead of 50. I'm not a scientist, but there's got to be a better way.
I know, it's unbelievable. Anyway, the
I
more
know.
we push on it and offer, these solutions, I don't know. Some obviously lobbyists are stopping it somewhere,
Well,
especially.
this is why what I'm doing it in Slovenia, because we're going to be a microcosmic example for the world. And so we want to retrofit factories here. We want to be the innovators in biotechnology and hemp. For me personally, it's the hemp technology is what's most nearest and dearest to my heart. So what could be better to have hemp, take the hempcrete game to the next level, take the hemp plastic game, take the hemp composite to the next level, take the hemp for animal bedding, for whatever you're using it for.
Yeah, but in a country of 2 million people, and you're already so entrenched over there, you're in a great position, which also makes me think you should start a consulting business because of all your connections to the world over. I mean, to the people.
I knew whatever you were going to say, I was going to say, I've done it. We do, the Tallman Group consults. So
Okay.
there's three things we do at the Tallman Group, main things we do. We consult, we have the global investment forum, and we get investors with startups. And then we have this research consortium that we're building in Slovenia. So we are a three-prong company. Consulting's not the most sexy thing to do, but it is, we're having a lot of success with it because of all my connections. So I hired a team to, yeah, it's a no-brainer.
It sounds fun to me. I mean, I think, putting those connections together, and I mean, I love that, and putting the pieces together and knowing how people should partner. You're just in a really perfect position for that. Um,
It is.
so
I just don't like partnering with everyone. We have to pick our clients, you know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's good too. You can pick and choose, and you see the pieces from, above, and you can really put some
Right.
you can put some you can make a difference in what and the people that you can put together. You're in a very strong position, and I think that's you're someone really to watch, what you're putting together. And I guess that leads into the next question, and kind of wrapping this up is like what type of strategic partnerships, or how do you see a US companies or entrepreneurs, what would be the best way for them to kind of get into the European market?
Yeah.
People
So,
not
so it
yet,
all,
on, that kind of stuff. What sector?
look, brands are not in Europe yet. Okay. I cannot overstate how important it is to, if you have a brand now in America, to get that to Europe now, because brands are happening. Well, it's only a matter of, I don't think people understand what this German thing's about, what's about to happen, and how this ripple effect will happen. And I don't think they understand, again, like I explained, that these pharmacies are de facto dispensaries, lots of them, right? So it can't. It's not a dispensary. It's not a dispensary. It's not, totally crazy. But in terms of when you walk in and you're just like, oh my god, I'm like a kid in a candy store. But it's a lot like that. So getting your brand now to Europe is so important because it's happening, and there's none here. There's no brands in Europe yet, right? So
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. Now there's a ton of other things, because what's happening is with these social clubs. Another way to put them, as Peter Holmberg would say, is cultivation associations, right? So these cultivations, that's what they really are. So now we think that you're gonna be able to grow up to at least 1,500 indoor plantations. 1,500 indoor. That's a solid little indoor plantation. But there can be thousands of them popping up over the next few years in Germany, and likely will be with this new law. So because now cannabis has become, oh, and then there's seeds and clones that'll be able to be purveyed. And what Peter did at the social clubs, and what Peter told me is, for seeds and clones specifically, you don't have to be a member of the club to procure them from the club, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's fascinating. Um, so just think of all the ancillary that pops up with just the kind of the root of what I described, no pun intended.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
these gardens. Cannabis is now becoming absolutely ubiquitous. These huge gardens everywhere. This is how the industry is built. And a lot of the Germans think, oh, it's not so regulated. It's a little willy nilly. They don't love it because of that. I'm actually even surprised that the Germans did it this way too. But what we did see in America is some of this type of stuff go on in the inception of certain states, as they matured through their, eventually to recreational. But we have this under medical, this kind of unregulated medical system. Here's one thing I'll say, and I can leave you with, that's very interesting, Pam.
Okay. Okay.
The medical marijuana in America was not regulated. Recreational was regulated. Okay. So medical marijuana was underregulated, and recreational was overregulated.
Yeah.
It's the opposite in Europe. Medical is regulated, even though what's happened in Germany, it's not, I like it. But GMP, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Recreational, won't be as regulated. Recreational won't be GMP. So so from coming from a business perspective, right? Think about that. So medical was in America, and then rec came and basically fucked up a lot of states because their medical was so robust. It was like a de facto legalization that a lot of that supported the average Joe and mom and pop business, right? Beautiful. So then rec came, and then now we've got more regulations and more taxes and more administrative paper, whatever it was just absolutely overregulated. California is such a great example.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And now in Europe, you have medical, which has been regulated, and now rec comes, but it won't be the same thing. And eventually rec will maybe take over medical, but I have even other thoughts about that. But the point is when rec comes, it'll be under regulated, and that's kind of what's happening now. And it's too bad the EU, the European Commission, hasn't signed off on license regulation because they basically forced the eventual Germany to do an end around, right? Which is not the best public policy, right? So here comes now rec will come into play, and it's going like look at social clubs. That's uber underregulated, right? And it's
Yes.
rec. It's a de facto form of rec. So here's the different dynamics of the market that one can understand. Just like vaping will never be as huge, in my opinion, in Europe because people smoke weed with tobacco here. That's
Ah,
just a huge difference. There's these little, little nuance esoteric tidbits that are really important for the industry. Like, think if you're a vape producer. Now, vapes are big in Europe because people can smoke it incognito, right? That's why people like their vapes the most. And smoking pure is becoming a little bit bigger, as they say, smoking just pure weed. But most people like their weed with tobacco in Europe. So will vapes ever be as big in in uh, uh, Europe as they are in America? Probably not. Will it be a huge, portion market? Yeah. Another thing that's very interesting. I'm digressing a little bit, but I think this is really important stuff about in terms of what types of businesses are important. Flower is king in Europe. You see, for 50 years they smoked shitty hash, right? Some good hash they had, right? But a lot, I talked to all my friends from the 90s and 80s, they just had this shitty Moroccan hard hash that, I smoke Moroccan hash. I've got some right here. That's amazing actually. But but generally, but back in the day, you just have the stories and go down to southern France, you're like, here's a hash thing. And you're like, oh God, I mean, I'll smoke it, but it's just not that. So then what happened is the homegrown movement happened in Europe in the 90s. And so people started growing homegrown, and they called it skunk, is what they called sensimilla, right? Or green bud, the
mhm.
50, the kind, the chronic. They called it skunk generally, right? And once they got a hold of that skunk, they never wanted to smoke any of that shitty hash again, right? So these are actually cultural market drivers that people need to
Yes.
understand about Europe that are, to me, super fascinating. So I hold the macro view. I'm not a micro guy. I just hold the kind of the 30,000-foot view, like you had said.
Yeah.
And yeah, it basically every single thing that's happening in America is now happening in Europe with a little tweak.
I love I didn't even think about what is the cultural differences, cultural consumption differences. And, hash is making a big comeback here. I think it all started with the solventless movement, a few years ago,
Yeah,
uh, right? And now it's
yeah.
like, it's all of a sudden these, hash, um,
I didn't even know that. I've been really America for a while, but it's funny because in Oregon, I went to a dispensary maybe 3, 4 years ago. Usually I just get my hash from my boy, my roots man. But then I want to get some, and they didn't have any. And I was like, holy shit, man! Because back in my day, the dabs, like back in the late '90s, that was isolator hash. We called it bubble hash, right? and
Well,
you
that's
made it
what they're
with,
calling it, bubble hash. Yeah.
well, so bubble hash is great. That really that's all I like to smoke with some exotic flavors is bubble hash from outdoor organically grown plants. Um,
Yes.
it's just for me, it's the best, you know.
Yes.
And it's funny it's making a comeback. It makes sense because people had to maybe go extreme before they got back to the hash. But what's great about hash is it's more functional. You don't go as up and down. Oddly enough, it's supposedly stronger, a concentrate, I guess. But for me, I haven't smoked flower. You know, my hippie friends are going to be ashamed of me, but it might be 2 years since I smoked. No, my boy had this like Bob Marley joint at his birthday, and I just took a ceremonial puff on it. It was fun. It was great, actually.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
but anyway, and I think hash will come back in Europe too eventually. And I think a lot of people do like hash. But I will tell you right now, Pam, you put your hand out. One's got even some nice hash in it, and one's got a butter skunk in it. I swear 90% of all my heady friends will just be like, oh, give me the skunk. Give me the skunk.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
Flower dominant.
It's all coming from the West Coast to the East Coast. So I'm always looking at the West Coast, but that's where you see it come, driving over here. So, but anyway, so we should wrap it
Yeah.
up. Yeah. So, I mean, great conversation. Is there anything else that you just want to add to the end? I mean, I'm excited to stop by your show. I really, yeah.
We're gonna love this. It's gonna be great to see you, Pam, in person, and
Yeah.
finally meet you in person.
Yeah.
And
They'll be running.
and then yeah, and then you just all I have to say. I have one last thing to say though.
Okay.
You can bring your husband to the hip hop party, okay?
Hey, Alex, it was really great to meet you. Honestly, I can't wait to follow you and everything that you're doing.